morning, everybody. Welcome to the Unabridged session. Unabridged is a red tea. It's from Fujian province. More importantly, it's from Tumuguan. Let's get ourselves based today where Tumuguan is. Tumuguan is in the Wui Mountains, and most of it's in the reserve area, the park reserve area. So it's part of that World Heritage Site, but it's definitely distinctive because so much red tea comes from there versus oolong tea. Does this mean there's zero oolong tea being processed there? No, but 90+% is red tea. And it's traditionally called out as the birthplace of red tea. And the birthplace of red tea, specifically the tea we're talking about, is smoky pine, or in the market, Bobsan Sutra. So that's where we are today. What kind of place is this? Can you just wander up there anytime you want? You know, you fly into the Fujian, you find your way to the Wui Mountains, and you get out a map and, hey, let me rent a car and just go drive through the preserve. Because I've heard that there's lots of wonderful tea up there. So you get in your car, you follow this road, and then you come to a gated area. Everybody's polite at the gate. There's usually 5 or 6 people at that gate because you know it takes a lot of people to man a gate. And you're asked questions. Who you see? Oh no, I'm not seeing you, but I'm just going and seeing the tea. Oh no, you have to have an appointment. A farmer or somebody in the tea industry has to come down and accompany you because you might get lost. And you might not be able to read signs in Chinese where they specifically say halfway up the mountain. It's about 30 minutes in the drive up the mountain. If you are not smart, you will get out of the car and play with the monkeys. The sign is a little bit more emphatic than that. There's monkeys all over the place. In this one place, you can park your car and look. You're really not supposed to get out and play with them. And you are most definitely not supposed to get out and feed them. Why is this? Monkey bites are painful and very dangerous sometimes. So that's one of the reasons, you know, it's inconvenient. A foreigner can't read, oh, those cute monkeys, when something happens. Is it just foreigners that they prevent from wandering in this area? No, it happens to be everyone. If you don't live in this area, then you can't just casually go there unless a farmer or somebody who lives in the area comes down and vouches for you and takes you up. So that's where we're going today. So how high up in the mountains is this area? At the very top, because there's a crest there, at the very top, it's 7,000 feet above sea level. So as you're driving up this, you actually have a quite steep ascent. So you go from about 3,000 feet above sea level all the way up to 7,000 feet above sea level as you crest over the hill. Crest over the hill, you're no longer in Fujian province, you're in Jiangxi province. It's really a wild setting. The forest comes right up to the edge of where they grow tea. These villages have been here for a long time. At least 1,000 years we've had villages here, or this one particular village in this area. So that's where we are today. And that's where Unabridged comes from. And we've talked before about Jin Jun Mei. Unabridged is Jin Jun Mei. Now, why would I name it Unabridged? Unabridged means it's the real thing. You get the full strength, right? No dilutions, nothing false. Why am I talking about false? When you read on the internet, when you check on the internet for Jin Jun Mei, some of what you see should make you throw up. Particularly, and I was doing that this morning because I knew I was going to talk about this a little bit. I had, okay, let's just randomly look at the first entry for Jin Jun Mei. And right away, I was ill. Right away, I was ill. This thing, and this comes from a company that should know better. I think they do know better. Not sure, but it makes you ill because they advertise this stuff. And let me tell you pricing so that you understand. Pricing is always the first indication of, is this the real thing or is this something else? So they're selling 2 ounces for $9.50. Wow, that sounds like Christmas to me. Until you look at it. They have a picture of it, and instantly you know it's not the proper, if you're in the tea business, you know right away, this isn't the right varietal to make this tea. The colors are wrong. That's the first thing. I have no idea what it tastes like, except bad, compared to what you're going to get today. And I scroll through. When you watch a horror movie, a good horror movie, there's initial horror, right? Bad things happen, not very nice things to the eyes. You feel horror. And then, because if it's a good horror movie, you get more horror. You get layered horror. And you get to midpoint, oh my God, wonder if I'm going to be able to finish watching this movie. That's what it's like when you go through these entries. I saw 2 different companies using the same photograph. I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, didn't I just see this photograph a slide or 2 before? It is a horrible, horrifying show on the internet when it comes to Jin Jun Mei. So let's think a minute about what are the preconditions for this happening. The preconditions are that Jin Jun Mei takes between 50,000 to 80,000 hand motions to create a pound. Even in China, where the cost of labor is less than the cost of labor here, do the math. It's still a big number. $9.50 for 2 ounces? Are you kidding me? Actually, is what should first come out of your mouth, because it can't be the real thing. It cannot, categorically cannot. First horror that occurs in that. There's more horrors to come, and we'll get to that. And I apologize. It's just like on Netflix, or you go down to the movie house and they have those screens, I think. Is it a PG, or is it an R, or is it an X? Graphic violence, graphic horror. I forgot to put that so that you would know what we're going to be doing today. And how I would have headlined this is R-rated graphic horror, scenes of extreme intensity. That's how I would have rated it, because there's more to come. Jin Jun Mei is a very fine tea, and you'll see in a minute. What does we're now in this valley here, because if you have one horror just after another, then it becomes boring. Now we have to have some reality before I catch the next horror. So that place where it grows is just beautiful. It snows almost every winter, but it doesn't stick on the ground very much. It also is foggy, much more there than it is in the rest of the Wuyi Mountains. And the Wuyi Mountains averages, I think it's 100 and, if my memory is correct, it's 160 days of fog a year. In Tungmuguan, where this grows, it's more, considerably more, 30 or 40% more. It's a lot of ideal conditions. What about the soil there? Is it minerally? Is it that lava? Turns out it is not there. The soil is different composition there, so you're getting a different result. And that's why doing red tea from that soil makes so much more sense than doing the oolong. Is there completely no minerality? There's a little bit, but you would not detect it from the areas where they're growing the Jin Jun Mei. We, every year, because we know one of the inventors of Jin Jun Mei, are able to get as much as we actually would want. But what we actually get is 1 or 2 pounds a year. And that's because it's really expensive. Initially, when we first started getting this, we thought, well, this will be one of these inside teas that we only share with very special friends. But over the years, as you've all gotten so sophisticated with tea drinking, you're all special friends now. And that's why this is available to you. This is, from a red tea perspective, right at the top of the heap. So that's part of the physicality of the environment. Very ideal for tea growing. What else comes from Tungmuguan that you might be familiar with if you've had it here? Glad you asked that question. Divine plum. When we had divine plum, that came from Tungmuguan. So again, this is giving you a sense of where the origin of this tea is. You know what? I think today, because there's so many things I want to talk about, we're going to start the tasting part of it so that you can really be tasting it. And then we have to layer some more horrors. So we have more horrors to come. But, you know, let's get some tasting so that we can offset these horrors. So, Tea Master, without further ado, we actually are going to surprisingly early launch into this because I want to compare what bad or fake Jin Jun Mei is with what you have today. So let's go ahead and make this, without further ado, the surprised and shocked, but not horrified, Tea Master will make an appearance and demonstrate how to brew this tea. Done. Oh.
Hi, good morning. 早上好. We do Unabridged.
Unabridged.
Chinese called Jin Jun. Is it John? Yeah, his tea. Okay. So this is my tea tree. Glass.
So set up as
okay.
usual.
Yeah.
You need 2 cups, a strainer, and you need to get your bag out. It's bag number 2, labeled Unabridged. So as you're watching her, most of you are familiar with the reasons and the rhythm and how to get started. And I'm going to continue down this path about why horrors are created with teas like Jin Jun Mei. Jin Jun Mei, at the top of its game, a cup in China will go between $30 and $100 at the very top of the game. That's a cup of Jin Jun Mei. So now we see why horrors occur, because it doesn't take much money or much investment to create a fake product. How do you know you have a fake product? Oh, we'll talk about that if we want. Because again, we got to layer these horrors. Okay, you see her rhythm. Gosh, if only I could have this rhythm, I would make outstanding cups of tea. Tea master just naturally is born with this rhythm. All right, cooling down the water, dissipating the steam, aerating, oxygenating, doing all those things in a magically rhythmical way. And she's getting out the tea leaves. So before she actually puts them in, I want you to show the audience what they look like. All right. So I ask you the following question. Is this full of golden yellow leaves? Oh, it's not. You mean this is the real thing? The horror is when you look at the first entry that comes up on Jin Jun Mei, you see all these golden yellow leaves. What's wrong with that picture? First off, wrong color. What does that imply? The wrong variety. The wrong variety. Oh, you mean these are LCSers? They swapped out an expensive varietal for something that's larger, easier to pick, and oh, by the way, not even from
Minutes.
Oh, 2 minutes. 2
30.
no, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Yep, talking instead of working. Usual understudy issues. All right, wait 2 minutes and 30 seconds on this. Okay. So that's the first thing I wanted you to note. And that's one of the horrors that you can immediately see and detect. Yes.
Internally, does the Chinese government make an attempt to crack down on scammers?
Great question. How many agents are in the field trying to grab scammers in China? It depends. For something like Jin Jun Mei, there's a lot because they know that this is a major fraud. It's Jin Jun Mei, Dragon Well, Scarlet Road, all the big name teas. Because hey, you know, it's like Bernie Madoff. You know, if his thought, I think, was, well, if you're going to scam, you scam at the highest avenues and do billions of dollars. Because if you get caught, it's all the same as if you've done just a few $100. Same with tea, exactly the same. That's where all the scammers congregate. Why? It's so much easier to get cheap knockoffs and then pop up in one place, disappear quickly, pop up in another place, disappear quickly. It's a real issue. The Chinese have focused more and more on these big old name teas because, first off, the source material areas are really angry because they're not getting credit And their name is being smeared. Do any of us like being smeared name-wise? This is a terrible thing that's happening. So yes, there is effort, and it's intensifying because the Chinese don't like this. The other part of that question that isn't asked but that's implied is, are people in the Chinese market actually fooled? And the answer is yes, because remember, I used to believe the Chinese had a T gene, because if you have a T gene, then you would never be fooled. But turns out, I asked scientists, there is no T gene in people. Therefore, they need the same education that all of us do. All right, timer has gone up. Oh my God, I just love the rhythm of the Tea Master. Everything is so easy. All right. So let's take a look at this for a minute. Beautiful color. Beautiful color. And what color is this again? Now let's see. I'm trying to think here. This is black tea. Oh no, it's red tea. So is it red? Not exactly. And is it pretty translucent? Yeah, I can see the tray underneath. That's good. These are all characteristics of Jin Jun Mei, of Unabridged. So on the market, if somebody serves you, you go to some place, give me your best Jin Jun Mei. See, you're giving the purveyor a chance to go to the back room and get the really good stuff when you say it that way. It better look translucent. If it is so colored you can't see through it, it's not right. What's happened is one of two things. They're using a different varietal. That's a bad thing. They're advertising it's the Jin Jun Mei varietal. Or else, maybe they just don't have skill as farmers. Now, if you don't have skill as a farmer, what happens? Why is the color different? It's because you have too many theorubicins compared to theoflavins. Or even worse, you've allowed the theorubicins to transform into theobronins. That's an ugly picture. I thought I wasn't going to do science today, but remembering I can't keep away from the 8-letter words. Sorry about that. Yes.
You said that you know the creator of this tea, so how did the creator disseminate this information? Because it sounds as if it's not, this creator is not the only one perhaps who's using the method. Is that true?
You know what? I think I have to give more context when I use the word creative. The inventor is what I meant to say rather than creator. And it's just like when you invent anything, other people will legally do a follow-up, especially if they're using the same variety. This is a great question because there's so many nuances and I skipped through them. I apologize. And it's making me think about the nuances. So Jin Jun Mei, the name means you got to use a certain variety. Many farmers all use this variety. And as such, while they didn't initiate the processing methodology, they shared that methodology within Tongluan, using that varietal, getting a result. Now, are all of them equally skilled? No. The person who actually invented this, hugely imaginative, and jumped from the usual way of doing red tea and had an insight in especially the roasting methodology to do it differently. And that is how this became so special. However, you can't keep these as secret for any huge long length of time. because lots of people are involved. It spreads, and within, again, Tumuguan, because you're using the same varietal, you're gonna get enough of the same result that, yes, this is what is trademarked in this area. And so the horror show, it starts with using other varietals. It's compounded by people who, when they brew it, don't have the skill to make sure that the theaflavins outnumber the theorubicans by a lot, should be somewhere in the 2-to-1 ratio, and that the theorubicans aren't transformed into theobromines. So how do you do that? Well, if I told you, that would be a problem, wouldn't it? Because that would mean that I know the exact IP. I know the general principles, and if I were actually tasked with doing this, I might be able to make something that for sure it wouldn't be red and cloudy. That I would know how to do. Would it be this taste? Oh no, not likely. All right. So let's get in here and, oh, you're not tasting it. I'm going to enter the quality arena, and then you will, and then we'll get to further holes. Actually, I forgot to tell you at the beginning, you already know one swear word in tea making. I'm going to teach you a second swear word later on, so you have something else to look forward to. So let me enter the quality arena. There's subtlety here. When you go through this, you're going to think about a number of things. And when you think those things, don't be afraid to say them. And then I'm going to expand and talk about where mistakes are in evaluating this tea. How do you know it's real versus, LCS stuff? Okay, I get this stringency. By the way, you're supposed to be taking notes when you do it. Forgot to remind you to do that. You're supposed to get out past week's notes because this is different than past week. Last week we had erudition. Ooh, this is very different. Both good for different reasons. Okay, and I'm gonna take one more sip because A, I'm greedy, and B, I want to verify that the flavor and aroma is what I think I'm tasting. Okay, it's your turn to brew. Yeah, and I'm sorry I threw you a curve this morning. Part of this comes from whatever rhythm and mood I happen to be in the morning. And this morning, even as I knew I was going to talk about many of these issues, what I didn't realize is, wait a minute, I'm going to give away the farm if I don't get everybody brewing earlier. So that's why we're doing it this way this morning. I understand this is not the usual way. For those of you who like to sleep in, we're already this far in, and it's like, and I apologize, I should have warned you that we were going to do it a little different. Yeah.
Is this varietal cultivated in, did it arise naturally? Was it found somewhere or was it hybridized?
Oh, this is a great question. And actually, if you spoke Chinese, you'd already know the answer because they call this cai cha. And what it is a wild varietal, not hybridized in Tumuguan. It's very specific to Tumuguan. Great question. My gosh, bunch of really smart tea geniuses I love working with tea geniuses. Let's see, I'm supposed to be walking through the reports. I lost my rhythm. Tea master heated the cups, made sure they were clean. Now pouring 170-degree water that she's aerated into the cup. 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Okay. So we've talked about color. We've talked about appearance. At a minimum, cannot be cloudy and murky. At a minimum. Second thing, cannot be too dark, too red. Oh, heavens, if it's black, I mean, you talk about horrors. That would be at the extreme end. That's lots of blood everywhere if it's totally black. So those are things that are important about color. The next layer that I'm going to talk about is taste. So I can't do that before you drink it because I'm trying not to disturb your appreciation and understanding. But I will tell you, there's a swear word within that taste. I'm not going to tell you yet because none of you will say it. I am 100% sure none of you will say it. Yes.
You know, for me, other tea tastings that, of course, there are bugs that are attracted to the tea leaves, regardless of varietal. But I wonder in an area that's so rich with so many different types of animals, whether there are any animals that are known to also chew on tea leaves or consume them in some fashion.
This is a great question. And it really is a flora and fauna question. Do animals, is this chew on tea leaves? Are there more bugs in this area? So there's a real good answer to this, and you'll understand it when you think of what the elevation is, and you think of what winter looks like. It's so cold there that as it edges into spring, you get some warming, but you don't get the same warming that you get within the Mooi Mountains. And so the result is bugs in this area are much later than they are within the Mooi Mountains. That's a great question. The other part of the question that I don't exactly know the answer, but I've never heard anybody say, any farmer say, you know what? I'm so angry. Those monkeys descended into my field and ate up all my Jin Jun Mei buds. I've never heard that. So I assume, and I've never seen monkeys in the fields. The monkeys are further down the mountain. So I really don't believe that they find the tea bush. I think that they find other things better. You know, they're making a mistake, of course, but nonetheless, the monkeys don't seem to bother. In fact, you know what? The farmers have built the farms in such a way. Okay, now this is coming to mind. They do have animals like dogs, which would keep monkeys out of the area. So whether inherently a monkey would find the taste of the tea leaf, I've never heard that. I just don't think so. I'm not sure. All right, so you're entering the quality arena. You're going to make your evaluation, and you're going to see, God, I can see all the way through this cup. That's a good thing. And it's not deep red. That's a great thing. And you're going to comment on astringency, aftertaste, and energetics. I'm already feeling some energetics. And then you're going to get to taste and aroma. And within that area, we're going to dig down. So we love going, while you're doing this, I'll chat a little bit more about the area. We love going into this area because they are still actually developing new fields close to the forest. In other words, they're taking the forest and moving it back a little bit and developing new fields. It's fascinating. Yes.
Rob observes the warmed leaves scent led with umami and a hint of chocolate, but then the steeped leaves had notes of florality, whereas tea water smelled like cider and was sweet like cherry and honey. It was overall round on the nose. So back to the top, the warmed leaves led with umami and chocolate.
Love this opening. Warm leaves, umami, and chocolate. You're on track, Rob. I haven't heard one swear word yet. Okay.
Steep leaves had notes of florality.
The steep leaves had notes of florality. Actually, not only are you scoring 100%, you're scoring 1,000% with that florality. The Chinese would talk about florality first, as you just did. Yes.
Tea water smelled like cider and was sweet like cherry honey.
Okay. So the Chinese would agree for the most part, but they wouldn't say it that way, except for the last word, honey. They talk about florality and honey, but your inclusion of cherries and what else?
Cherry and honey.
Cherry, okay, is acceptable. Zero problem. And so far, we're in very great shape. Nice description, Rob.
And overall, he says it's round on the nose.
Ah, round on the nose. Now we're beginning to get some places that we're going to end up going. Great. So part of, as you're thinking about this, let's see, let me not dump this out. Give you a little bit more of a chance here because this is really interesting. And again, this shows the level you all are at because you're talking about this almost exactly the way the Chinese would talk about it. And that's really the goal here, to get you to be able to distinguish what the Chinese consider, and this is the Chinese and the tea elite, the Chinese scientists, tea scientists, consider levels of excellence.
Rob adds, the tea warmed my belly but chilled my neck. I feel like it assures victory.
I love tea that assures victory. You know, now that you've said that, I guess I might have to drink this all the time because I'm not into losing. So Rob talked about warm to the belly and a chill to the neck. And that's giving him a sense of leading him to feeling invincible. Great. I like that. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit more of exactly how the Chinese would talk about this. And this is again our judges, tea tasting judges, I should say, people in the tea industry when they're distinguishing and trying to figure out what's real and what isn't. So again, remembering, starting with leaf color, it should predominantly not be yellow. You can have some yellowness in there, but not much. That's the first thing. Can you have stems? We've seen stems in other red tea. No, stems are illegal. Not illegal, but stems at this level of processing, you should see 0 stems. What about if I see unevenness? That's not a good sign. We don't like unevenness. We like evenness with this tea.
When you say evenness, do you mean like in a
Size.
bud size?
Size. Even appearance. And much of the Jin Jun Mei doesn't have an even appearance. And again, that's a clue that what they've done is they've done mixing. I mean, when you adulterate anything, what happens? Unless you're a skilled adulterator, you know, it's going to look, wow, it's not very even. Well, that's a bad sign. So, from a mouthfeel perspective, the Chinese say full body. They also say full mellowness. These are the first two things they think about with this tea. The mellow nature, a full bodiness to it. And then when they talk about flavor, they start with floral. It's really interesting because most Jin Jun Mei on the market will not generate that comment. Most Jin Jun Mei on the market will generate another comment. And I'll help you with that comment. Most of them will say, oh, sweet. And in addition to that, not dense. So sweet and light. Is this thing sweet and light? The answer is no. You get an aftertaste of sweetness, which is what the Chinese would say. But it leads with floral, honey, and then sweetness and density. Yes.
Maybe more particularly in Yunnan, you've spoken of other plants that are growing either side by side or in the general vicinity.
Yes.
Is that the case for this tea? Are there
Oh,
flowers
great
in the
question.
vicinity or other plants impacting perhaps?
Great question. So, is this grown next to other plants, like in the Aila Mountains, where you've got these ancient trees and forests? Is the plant the Cai Cha that is used for this? Is it surrounded by a bunch of other different varietals of plants, just completely different plants? The answer is no. These are grown. The plants themselves grow together, and they're not. They're semi-segregated because this stuff is so valuable. They don't want people or anything coming in there. So it would look to you, if you were walking through there, like a monoclonal field. Although it doesn't look that way exactly to us because there's more space between the plants than what we used to see. So if you hadn't seen a tea field before and this first tea field, you would say, oh, okay, I kind of get this. But if you've gone to, say, the Dragon Well area or somewhere else where the monoclonal fields are tight, they appear tight, you know, and by tight, close together is really what I mean. Then you would say, oh, this does have a different look to it. Great question. Great question. So the swear word I'm going to teach you, and if anybody ever says this about Jin Jun Mei, and they might, because for bad Jin Jun Mei or LCS Jin Jun Mei, this comment can frequently be heard: sweet potato. In China, in the tea industry, when you hear that, especially related to Jin Jun Mei, without looking at what the leaves look like, without even tasting, they'll tell you, okay, you've been tricked. Should not have that flavor. So let's talk about sweet potato for a minute here, because you can legitimately hear that about some of the Yunnan teas. So as we learn to make judgments about areas, Some of the Yunnan teas, and not really the Ilau teas, you would never, ever hear that about the Ilau teas. And part of that has to do, ancient tree does not come across as sweet potato. Also, the Ilau, you remember, has stems which reinforces a flavor which is not sweet potato. But some of the monoclonal, because the varietals are different and the production standard is different, can legitimately have something which might remind you of sweet potato. And that in Yunnan, under certain circumstances, not out of bounds. Always out of bounds with Jin Jun Mei. It always means that they put something else in there, or they are using tea from a different area. Jin Jun Mei legitimately comes from 3 places. One is Tongwuguan, then there's another village close by, Chengdun, and then there's another village, Wushandi, and these are all contiguous. And so it's just like tea within the mountain for cliff teas. So it's 7.7, but you have, next to the edge, half in the mountain, half out of the mountain, sometimes not a huge difference. Well, same thing. You have Tongwuguan and what they say, a several kilometer circumference. And all the tea from that, if it's the Cai Cha and done in the proper way, it's going to be Jin Jun Mei. Will it be the same grade? No, there's going to be differences because the soil components in each of the areas are different, but they're close enough so that they don't go out of bounds. Yeah.
Jennifer says, in addition to the sweetness, there's an astringency to the tea that feels cleansing.
Oh, that is so interesting. I don't know how you knew to say that, Jennifer. They, in China, when they talk about this tea, dense and cleansing can sometimes be heard together. And I love that you picked that up because that is, for most tea drinkers, so subtle. Most of the people that walk in off the street here, and now you understand clearly what the challenge is we have with new people coming in. I can't ask them, where are you in your tea experience? I can ask them, but they usually haven't even thought about it enough for it to be relevant to me. If they say, I grew up in China, I grew up in this area, I drank lots of this and that, okay, that clues me in. If they say, well, I had my grandmother's English breakfast, yeah, okay, that clues me in a different way. So all of these things require experience, and you've had the experience and you're digging down and capturing these experiences in a way that, again, sophisticated tea drinkers in China would understand. And great comment, Jennifer. Love that. Yeah.
Jennifer says, it's all thanks to you and Bijou, John.
Thank you from both of us. All right. So I apologize today because, again, I threw everybody a curve, and I myself wrestled with how to present this because this is all very important information, and it's an important way to think about tea. And we wanted to use this to highlight some things about how to look at tea, appearance, tea water appearance, taste, and how it develops. And you'll find us focusing and narrowing in more and more unless we have a lot of new people. When we have a lot of new people on broadcast, we will not do that because that's harder to do, or we won't do it as much. But with this group, we're gonna continue to narrow in. All right, as a reminder to you, April 12th is the last day we're open. We won't reopen until May 27th. And so the result is remembering there are two words in the English language that are the most horrifying words that can ever be issued or ever be said or actually heard. Tea emergency. So think about planning ahead because you're not going to be able to order it through the website. You got to get it here before we leave. Also, for the tea tastings, I will pre-send you pictures for 4 sessions. I'll label those by date, and by date that is in the, I'll say, put in the email the date that they'll be available on YouTube. So, and we're going to have 3 weeks on the YouTube where nothing is going to be done, because if I had understood a little bit more clearly what our dates were going to be, I'd have synced it up a little bit better. We'll do better next year. And this is, restarting with taking people this year. All of this is a little different than what we've done in the last 6 years. And so we're working to get that tighter. All right. So your responsibility this week is to stay healthy, and we go on from unabridged to, and why am I, how can I forget this? Because you know what? This is why I know you'll all be on next week's session, because I'm going to give you an ovation next week. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.
There you go.